Welcome to the virtual career fair hosted by the Sustainable Community Aid Network, featuring an interview with the owner of Hill Studio, Allison Hill.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. Could you start off by introducing yourself and telling us about your passion?
Sure. My name is Allison Hill. I am the owner of Hill Studio. I am the curator of Restore and the founder of Hill Run Club. I've been in the business of hair for over 12 years now. I've owned my salon for over 6, and I consider myself a community builder and activator.
Amazing. And would you say that the idea for your business came about because of your passion for community and hair?
Okay, so the idea for my business actually, I don't really know where it came from. I feel like it's always actually been with me. Since I've been small, I've always had an interest in doing hair. And the older I've gotten now and the more experiences I've realized that hair is actually a medium to wellness, and it's a medium to communicate and connect with people. I believe that many of us already know in our hearts what we should be doing, but sometimes we're a little afraid to take those steps because maybe we haven't seen really good examples of how that would turn out. I know it took me a long time to actually start my business in hair because I was afraid. I thought that I should take a different path, one that people celebrated and got a corporate job and chose a safe route. But I realized a little bit later that being happy and being passionate about the work you do really impacts the quality of life that you have. We spend more than 8 hours a day, at our jobs with our coworkers, doing things over and over again. And I think that it's really important to do work that you care about, because ultimately doing something over and over again changes how you perceive the world and how your mind works.
Wow, definitely. So you mentioned that you work like 8 hours a day doing kind of the same thing over and over. So how does your typical day look like?
Okay, so the good thing about this industry is that you don't actually have the same days over and over again. The days can be long. So I'll start out with the hair side of it. When I first started out in hair, you have to build a clientele, right? Because people don't really know you that well. And especially when it comes to Afro textured hair, there really is a relationship between the stylist and the client. So I spent many of my early years working under other really good hairstylists and understanding not only how they did hair, but how they interacted with their clients, how they built relationships and sustained relationships for a long time, because ultimately those relationships lead to your clientele that really gives you a robust day of full activities. So I started out as a hairstylist, following around other more established stylists and understanding what they're doing. And then eventually through that, people started to see what my skill set looked like. And then slowly I was able to kind of build up my clientele from there. So very early in the game, I would start sometimes 9 o'clock in the morning and not end till maybe 9 o'clock at night, because there was such a demand for the skills that I had. And when I was a little bit more eager, that kind of worked for my life. But there was a lot of things that I had to learn that I didn't really understand about running a business and doing even work that you care about in a very sustainable way. When you are excited about your work, you can throw yourself into it and do it all the time, and it can really absorb you. But it's important that even in the things that you love, that you create some balance in your life. So it took me a few years to understand what appropriate pricing looked like, right? Like what the right clientele for me looked like, what skills I wanted to focus on and really hone in on my niche. So I think the journey for a hairstylist can be not as linear as people think. And it might take a little bit of time to find what you're really good at. And that could be behind the chair, that could be in television, that could be in magazines. There's so many different avenues of hair. So it's really important, I think, to spend a little bit of time at the beginning and try different things and see what kind of resonates and clicks with you. Now, a typical day for me looks like 4 to 5 clients. I work within a membership model. So all of my clients are people that I see on a regular basis who I've created a plan with so that they understand like when their appointments are coming up, the frequency, the goals that they have for their hair. Like I've really worked to curate an experience for my clients. And then outside of that, I've expanded my business to incorporate many wellness aspects that I found that were missing from the wellness industry before. And that was something that I was able to do by really listening to my clients and understanding what their needs were, and then finding those gaps and filling them within Hill Studio.
That is amazing that you have that kind of a membership model, because it's more than just making hair. It's really about connecting, as you said.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, we just experienced like the wildest things through the pandemic, and everybody hates talking about the pandemic, but it really was a time where you had to really think on your feet. And being an entrepreneur gave me the flexibility to move around, try new things, listen to my audience, and react very quickly. And that's a skill that you need a lot of practice at. So working in this industry it shakes you up a little bit. It's not necessarily easy, but it's a great training ground to figure out what you're good at, what you like doing, and different ways to maneuver around it so that you can last for a long time.
Mm-hmm. You've really honestly kind of already touched on the next question I was going to ask, which was, because you mentioned earlier that you didn't just want to take the safe route, that you just wanted to do what you were passionate about. And again, you've kind of illuminated on it, but what would you say are some of the challenges that you faced at the beginning of your journey in particular?
Okay. So the thing about challenges is that they actually present themselves all the time. And especially in entrepreneurship, as you move up the ladder, as you execute an idea, more challenges will come because every level has its own set of new rules. But what I would say as far as when I first started out, it was one, getting my name out there, right? Like understanding like what platforms I could use to share my work that would come out in an authentic way, right? Because there's a lot of platforms that require a lot of attention and energy. And I often have to remind myself that I'm not actually an influencer. What actually makes me money is doing the work in the business. So you have to find a balance between sharing the information, but also doing what people came for you to do, right? So that was a little bit of challenge of like finding out what was the right platforms for me and how to share what I did. What I did find most is that word of mouth is the strongest tool. Because what will happen is, let's say I really like a client's energy, right? It's very likely that she has friends who are just like her. So if I do a good job with her, she's going to tell her friends, she's going to tell her network. So you get a market of people who are within that same vibe. But when you just rely solely on, let's say, social platforms, you get everybody, right? So it's kind of, sometimes it's hard to decipher whether or not all the people coming in are the right clientele for you. So this industry is unique from, let's say, selling a product where anybody can buy your product. And as long as they come with the money, it's great. When you're in the service industry, and especially in the salon industry, you are touching, you are seeing, you are feeling these people all day, right? They're coming to you about what happened to them last week, their families, their trials, right? All of these things are being poured into you and you are pouring into them. So this work specifically is different in that you have to interact with energies, right? So doing the right client can have you feeling like you're on cloud nine. You can be inspired. You can have a great time. Constantly doing the wrong clients will actually make you hate this work. So it's very important, not just to have the skill set, but to understand who you are, what activates you, like what excites you, what type of people inspire you, and then over time curating your world so that all those people are pouring in, so that you can last in this for a long time. Because what you don't want to do is burn out and lose the love for your actual passion.
Yes, yes. I think especially the power of the word of mouth has been really underestimated, really.
Yes.
All businesses are going to be strong with regards to the social media
Yeah.
outreach. Because as you said, you might not be getting the right people, right? So I think that's a very good insight that you gave. So again,
I have one more insight.
Okay. Go on.
And it's actually specifically around hair. It's harder than it looks. I think through social, sometimes it can be glamorized and you see the beginning, right? Everybody looks jacked, and then see the end and you're like, bam, that was great, right? But those who really care about the craft understand that it actually takes a lot of education. It takes a lot of practice. And it's different from other careers in that if you're supposed to end, let's say, your corporate job at 5 o'clock, you can close your laptop and go home. But if your client is still in your chair at 5, you cannot close your laptop and go home, right? You have to stay and complete it. So this industry is different in that the hours, right? The rigidness that you can get in different environments, you can't necessarily get here. So that's why I always reiterate, like, be around people you like, do the things you like, find the things that activate you, the things that you're really good at doing, and then perfect those, because this is not a traditional working environment. It's very self-driven. And if you're not careful, you can burn out instead of like being charged up and activated around it.
Yeah, again, the next question I was gonna ask, you've already touched on it.
Okay.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, what do you enjoy the most about starting your own business?
Ooh. Okay, so starting my own business specifically, when I first started out in doing hair, I worked in a salon. And I think that's very important to mention here, because what we often see is like the end and how it worked out. But many people don't understand the steps that are taken prior to it working out. So before I opened a salon, I completed an apprenticeship where I worked in a salon for about a year or so, before, actually 2 years, before I was able to complete my hours to get my license. So within those first couple of years, I didn't have a lot of clients and the hours were kind of all over the place. But that was really the learning ground for me, because at that time I was able to study under stylists who had been in the industry for a long time, who were really good at specific skill sets and were really also good at good client management. I got a leg up in that situation that is different from some of my friends who took a traditional route, because during that time I was also able to relationship build. And being a hairstylist is about your relationships. It's about your clientele, right? Nobody's just going to give you clients all the time. It's your responsibility to seek those people out and to nurture those relationships. So that's what I was really able to learn there. Then I moved on to another salon where I worked for about 5 years before I opened my own salon. This part of my journey was really important because I was able to concentrate on doing hair, right? And that's really important because you need to focus on your base skill. Spend the time understanding what you're really good at and what your skills are, especially when it comes to your hand, and perfect those, right? Because once I was able to open a business, let's say when I was working for somebody, I could just focus on that. So let's say 90% of my efforts were going into just doing hair, right? Maybe at the end of the week, I would tally up how much I did, give that to my boss, but I didn't have to worry about keeping the lights on. I didn't have to worry about marketing. I didn't have to worry about retail. I could just focus on my skill set and build my clientele. Once I moved into actually owning a business, I would say that maybe it reduced down to about 40% of me doing hair and 60% of me actually focusing on where my business is going and what I'm doing with it, right? So it's important to ask yourself, what do I actually want to do? And then what are the steps to build a really strong foundation? If I had jumped into starting a salon before I really mastered hair, then my level of understanding how hair worked would have been compromised. So I say to folks, take your time. Okay. It's not a race. Every step is really important. And if you don't take the time to really perfect the steps, you're pretty much standing in a house of cards, right? Because if you're not good at your base skill, if you're not good at what people will come to you for, then over time, they will leave, right? So take your time, build the skill set. If you want to become a hairstylist, perfect, find your niche. If your next goal is to become an entrepreneur and own your own salon, take some business courses. You're going to have to step back from doing hair a little bit, but then take that time to grow the next skill of running a business, because those are two separate things.
Yes, I was actually talking to another one of our entrepreneurs, and she said exactly what you said about kind of zoning into your niche, like perfect your niche first. Like, don't think like, oh, I'm just gonna go save the world. Wow, like start with what you're good at, what you're passionate about. So I think that's amazing.
And that way that becomes second nature to you, and you can do it while you do the other thing. But try to do those two things at the same time. It's not impossible, but it makes it much harder and a much slower process.
Yeah. Okay, so with your wellness programs, is there any upcoming new ones that you're trying to get out, or are you trying to like revamp any of them? What's going on there?
Okay, so one of the really exciting things about working at Hill is that we really like integrate the idea of being long-term in this industry with like, what does it take to feel well? What do you have to do in your life to make sure that you have balance? And standing all day is actually very physical work. Being a hairstylist is actually very physical work. And when I first started out in hair, I would start really early. I would miss my lunch. I would get home late. I would eat fast food. I wouldn't go to the gym. I would miss out on fun things because like I was booked so far in advance and I didn't take the time off, and like finding a balance was really challenging for me. And at first it was fine because I was young and I could bounce back. I could stay up late, eat Burger King, wake up really early in the morning and still function. But over time, I could see how that was wearing on my physical health and my mental health. So one of the things that I wanted to do was answer the question of like, Hill is one of the places where Black women come to feel well. So what other areas can we offer to them that they can come back here for that same feeling, right? Because also as my clientele grew, I realized I can't do everybody. I can't reach everybody in the same way, right? And you'll also notice that your clientele will even flow throughout your life. Sometimes you'll see somebody once a month, once a week for like years, and then maybe something will change in their lives and then they don't come as often, or they don't need you in that way. And you'll see like ebbs and flows through your clientele. But what I found was that the women still wanted to come back into the space, even if they weren't necessarily getting their hair done, because there was an energy that came off of the space. So that's kind of where the wellness sort of portion came into play, because I started doing yoga, right? And this is kind of the beauty of being an entrepreneur, because you can integrate the things that you like to do into your business, right? So I started doing yoga, I started running and sharing my story with my clientele, with my audience, and people would ask me, how are you getting that done? Where do you do that? Where do you buy your shoes? Like, how can I run for that long? So I decided from there, okay, let's create some spaces with other Black female entrepreneurs and wellness practitioners who are also looking for this audience in these spaces, and let's start up some activations. So the first thing that we did was actually called Hill Insider. And what I would do is I would reach out to another Black woman practitioner who is an entrepreneur who was looking to break into the market, and we would offer our space for free. We would clear out the salon. We hosted yoga. We had plant parties. We did spinning. We did all sorts of activities together. That grew into what we call now is Restore. Restore is wellness activations with a specific lens around anti-Black racism. We have a team of wellness practitioners who are therapists, counselors, trauma-informed yoga therapists who go into corporations after we've experienced something like George Floyd or a mass shooting in Buffalo, and we really cater to the needs of how Black people are feeling in their workspaces, right? Oftentimes, what happens to us in the public, we are thought to just go into work and not necessarily like act like it's affecting us, or like just pretend nothing's happening, but we know that something is happening, and corporations can see how that is in fact impacting their bottom line, their employee retention, the mental health of the staff that are working there. So through Restore, what we do is we work with organizations like CAMH, UFT, Sunnybrook Hospital, and we create programming for their Black staff around those issues, but also around just general wellness of how to cope within workplaces. And then the second thing that I'm really enjoying right now is Hill Run Club. Hill Run Club was, we're into our second year now. I started running it during the height of the pandemic because the gyms were closed and I needed some sort of physical activity. And now we have over 300 members in the Run Club. Every weekend, about 50 to 60 women gather. We run 3-5 kilometers, and we have programs planned out throughout the rest of the year. We do trail runs. We're going to camp. We're doing self-defense classes. We do strength and injury prevention classes. But really that community is just, it's developed to reinforce the idea that it is important for Black women, especially, to take the power back and to hold the responsibility for caring for themselves. We know that nobody's coming to save us, right? And we know that historically we're put in a place where we are thought to be the caregivers, right? And that we're supposed to be pouring out and pouring out. But who is pouring into us, right? So we're answering the question of, it is your responsibility to pour into yourself. And we're going to create a space where it's fun to do that, where you don't have to feel guilty doing that, where you can get education and guidance around how to do that. So that's what the Run Club is about. And we have so many exciting programs that are coming up for the year, and it has grown past what we expected. So we need support in social media management, program management. And the really cool thing that ties kind of back to the salon here is that the majority of the women that come are because of the relationships that we've built in the salon over years, right? So we're running with our clients, we're running with our clients' friends, we're running with people who maybe have never come to the salon, but they've been watching how the salon has been growing over years. So it all works together, and my intention is to make working at Hill fun. Like, if you're going to spend a lot of time here, if you're going to be pouring your energy into this space, then it should fill you back up too.
Wow, that is amazing. I think all those community activities, yoga, running club, like I would like to do that.
You need to come.
I would like to do that. That's so
timely,
so needed, especially when you spoke about the anti-Black racism in the workplace. Could not have been more timely. I think it's definitely important to raise awareness about that, because we can't keep being silent,
We can. And I really believe, and even what SCAN is doing, we have to answer the problems ourselves. Like, it's up to us. We've been looking around, we've been calling for help. Maybe they're coming, maybe they're not. But I think that especially our generation, we have a set of tools and skills and access that generations before us didn't have, right? So instead of us looking around and saying, who's going to do this and who's going to do that, let's do it. Let's do it ourselves, right? These industries fashion, all these different industries look to our cultures to understand what's coming next, what's hot, what should be going on. So let's turn our energy, let's turn our efforts inwards. Let's solve the problems for ourselves and create opportunities for ourselves.
Yes, yes, definitely. So what are the qualities that you would say brought you to the point that you are in today?
Okay. Grit. Grit. My father was an entrepreneur. He owned his own business, and that's what an entrepreneur is. He was a mechanic, and he owned a mechanic shop, not actually far from here. And I've watched my father work like that since I was born, right? I've been working since I was like maybe 7. So I was around, like my family is of entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs. But what I would say is this is not for the faint of heart. It's not. When you are an entrepreneur, you have to drive the boat. You got to look at what's coming. You got to look side to side. You got to look back. This is very different from other industries where somebody says, okay, this is what you have to do this week. And whether or not you get it done, your money's coming. This is if you don't kill it, you don't eat it sort of situation. And I think once you accept that idea, not as a burden, but as your responsibility, then you can flip it, right? Because that also means nobody can tell you where the ceiling is. Nobody can tell you, oh, you need to wait for this to happen. As long as you have the grit to follow through, you can make what you need to make happen. So what I would say is there's many different types of entrepreneurs, right? There's people who are just really good at business and they could sell you paper clips today. They can sell you shoes tomorrow because they're really good at sales, right? But some other entrepreneurs need like a passion behind it, right? So I think it's important to figure out what type of entrepreneur you are. Do you just like business? Can you do whatever? Can you fit in any situation and do whatever? That's fine, do that. But maybe you're the type of entrepreneur that really needs to focus on something you care about, because this is not easy. So when you get to the point where you want to give up or quit, you need to understand what your why is. And that's why I would say a lot of businesses don't make it, is because when it really comes down to it being really, really tough and you have to dig really, really deep inside, if there's nothing in there that's shaking you up and reminding you, then it's easy to depart from it. But when you know why it's there, then you can be like, okay, it's rock bottom, no problem. I'm going to build it up, or I'm going to reimagine, or I'm going to settle this and start something new. So I would say grit and knowing your why is probably the two most important skills that you need to have to survive in this entrepreneurial lifestyle.
Thank you so, so much. Yes, you've given so much information, so much advice. Because the last question was going to be like, okay, if you were to sum it all up, what piece of advice would you give to youth that are looking to go into this industry, the hair industry, and even looking to expand even bigger than that, like what you're doing? So what would you say?
Okay, last piece of advice that I would give, take a little bit of time and dream up your life. Dream up the best case scenario, right? Imagine that there's no limit. Take away the idea of money, take away the idea of people's perceptions of you or what success looks like. Take some time to figure out what that looks like for you, right? And then what that is, start working on it. Because the money may or may not come at first. The approvals of your friends and family may or may not come at first, right? But when you know what your dream is, then you can follow that roadmap. Don't look around. Don't look at how that person's doing it or that person's doing it, because ultimately what you're doing is you're choosing a different life for yourself. Many people will follow a path where things are laid out for them, and that is actually okay too. But being an entrepreneur is a very specific route. So what you don't want to do is get to the end of that street and be like, why am I here? Who put this idea in my head? Whose path was I following? Like, was this my idea, or did somebody tell me this when I was 6? And now I feel like I need to follow through on this. Being an entrepreneur and having that spirit is something that should be nurtured, right? If you really love it, do it. But there's so many different places where you can do it. So take away the ideas of what other people have for you and figure out what that looks like for you. And that when it comes to hair, know that energy is everything. Energy is everything. So when it comes to clientele, be yourself, be natural, see who you resonate with, and then re-invite those people into your space over and over again, and educate yourself. There's a lot of, hair is one of those things that, yeah, you don't necessarily need your license. You could go, you could work somewhere under somebody else's license, or you could work from your home, or those sort of things. But over time, that changes the type of clientele you have, the type of access you have, the type of opportunities you get. Just on YouTube, going to classes, finding people who are in the industry, spending time working with them, so that you can piece together what a beautiful life looks like for you.
Wow. Thank you so much for all that advice, and thank you in general. Yes, we've come to the end of the interview. I hope you have an amazing day, amazing rest of the week, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to seeing who shows up.
Definitely.